Charity Gaming Guild proudly brings to you
The Charity Gaming Guild presents
The Charity Gaming Guild presents
the
Nat
Pun
Pun
Podcast.
Well, hello there, everybody. It's me, No, it's not Mario. It's Bertie, and I am going to be taking control of our Nat Pun community episode. So this is the episode where we talk about topics that are raised by our community for our community. And I am joined today by our wonderful co-hosts. We have... Introduce yourself. I'm not doing it for you.
Thanks, Bertie, for that great introduction. John, I'm John.
Well done, John. Who's next?
I'm not John.
And I am also not John.
So that's Andy and Ash, if you hadn't guessed. If you've gotten to this episode and you're not sure who we are, go back and watch the others a couple of times and then come back to us and we'll be good. So the episode for this week, this month, is on the topic of Dungeons and Dragons and mental health. This has been quite a big topic in the media over recent months and years, just with how D&D has been picking up, especially during COVID. So I'm interested to find out from my co-hosts how, if at all, they feel that it has impacted them or people that they know the benefits of D&D for mental health.
So I'll jump in first. So just because you mentioned COVID, my sort of entry point into D&D was actually just after that first kind of lockdown finished. Our work offices just shut. I was working from home the whole time. I think Ash had posted something on Facebook saying looking to get a regular game together, and it was a good excuse to actually meet up and see some people, get out of the house. So yeah, it was a bit of a lifeline in that kind of COVID time, and then afterwards as well.
What did you think was the element that had the biggest impact for you?
I think for me, it was getting out and actually seeing people. At that point in time, the friends that I'd grown up with had all, we started having families. People had moved apart as well, so we weren't seeing each other so often. So the pub trips and all that had stopped. So it was getting with other people, people that I knew Ash from school, but we hadn't sort of seen each other in years, really, had we? Same with some of the other players. Got to meet people I didn't know, like Andy, was in that first campaign for a little while with us as well, before we went into second lockdown and had to kind of pause it all. So getting to meet new people as well. It's, I find it really useful because I'm a bit of an introvert actually. And I find D&D really helps me to kind of go, put myself out there and, talk to people that I wouldn't necessarily talk to.
Yeah. So it's the social connection side, which is a big thing. I know definitely through COVID, people were isolated, they were alone. So it wasn't very easy to get in contact with others, to reach out and get that normal kind of human connection that you would get from a normal trip to the shops or going into the office for work or pop into the library for people who still do that if they exist. How about you, Ash?
I don't talk about this very openly, but I will for the sake of this episode. I suffer from PTSD. So I've been diagnosed with that for about 4 or 5 years now. And for me, D&D gives me control back. It lets me experience a situation where I'm in control of what's going on, and it gives me relief from the real world and the pressures of real life and what's going on. And it's really important to me to have that, and it really helps. That escapism from life, really, sometimes is just what's needed. Which is why Tuesday nights, our regular weekly meet-up, where John goes as well, really, really important to me personally to help with that. But also things like all of our charity events, all the online games we play, they all feed into that and creating that kind of safe environment, not just for me, but for everybody who's involved with it as well. I think it's really, really important.
That's really, I'd say brave, but I guess it is in a way. So thank you for sharing that, if it's something that you haven't mentioned before. And I think it's also important for these kind of things to be spoken about, because there are potentially other people in our community or not in our community who maybe grabbed hold of this podcast and listened along to find out that there is someone else who is dealing with the same thing, and hearing how it can help, which I think is very important.
I do hear a lot from my members as well. I have a lot of members who contact me saying that they have this issue with mental wellness or mental ill health, and what we do helps, giving them that connection or that safe space to be. Particularly, I know John mentioned COVID there, the number of people throughout COVID who would message me and go, oh, this campaign that you did, or this campaign that Chris did, or this campaign that this person did, or this game was fantastic, it was great. Through COVID, you were the only people I had any interaction with. Mm-hmm. You don't realise how much of an impact you can have for people until people come forward and tell you. And then it was quite humbling. There's one person in particular, I won't name them obviously, they came to me and said, throughout all of COVID, I had to completely isolate because of my physical health. The only people I spoke to were charity people when we played games.
Wow. You
literally kept me going through COVID. And that was a really humbling and nice message to receive, and to see we can have that kind of an impact, and Dungeons and Dragons as a whole as well, not just the charity obviously, can have that kind of connection with people, can bring people together.
Yeah, that's incredible. Andy?
I'm probably to a degree slightly different from you guys, because I am not an introvert.
What?
Really?
In fact, I love to be the centre of attention, which sounds quite arrogant, but this gives me that opportunity. You know, if I'm running a game, then in many regards I am the centre of attention, because the world or that story revolves around me, and it gives me an opportunity to use my creativity. And don't be wrong, I'm not doing this because I want to get all of the entertainment. I love to make people laugh. I love to make people happy. And if I can run a session and people can come up to me after and say, oh, that was so much fun, that's a real buzz for me. And it's a big thing that I don't think I ever really experience in other games. I mean, I guess we all start from the same point, aren't we? Because the fact that the whole group, you're all here to play D&D, so you've already got something in common. If I went into a pub and started shouting out, look at me, look at me, look at me, not everyone might appreciate that. But in the D&D game, it works. And so whilst I get perhaps different benefits from other people around this table, and certainly the wider audience listening to this and playing with the charity, even someone who is fortunate enough to be outgoing and not perhaps be burdened with some of the issues that we've spoken about, I still get a massive benefit out of it.
So a couple of things that have been mentioned that I kind of would like to explore a bit more is, John, you mentioned escapism. So how is that something that you have found that Dungeons and Dragons has helped you with?
Yeah, so for me, kind of being introverted, what I do for work, it requires a certain amount of maturity on the external facing maturity, I'll say. Internally, it's definitely not. But I love the fact that, especially our Tuesday night sessions, because we get to know the characters and they develop, kind of get to not be the sensible one. I don't have to be. I can be the one that suggests, why don't we just blow it up, and everyone just goes, that's a valid idea, let's explore that. It's perfectly fine. There's no consequence to getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. I spend so much of my time, with work, like say, young family, trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing because the impacts it has. And for D&D, I don't need to worry about that. Let's be honest, if I blow up the All Havens one week, it's okay, we can put it back together next week. It's magic. It's all good. So for me, it's that side of things, really.
Yeah. That's great. And I know that there are a lot of people who have stresses in their daily lives, whether it's family related, work related, health related, and having a chance, whether it's in person or online, to just kind of switch that off, even for a couple of hours, can make a massive difference. I know that for myself, there are definitely times when it's not great, and I go, I don't know if I can be bothered to play. I don't know if I have the energy. But as soon as I get on to that game and I start playing and you get that escapism, the relief from it is just incredible in comparison to where you were before, where you've been kind of stuck in this mindset. To then have that just switch off without almost even trying is very nice, if I can say, for myself. And I'm sure other people have experienced similar things.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I don't know if you feel the same, Bertie, as well, but having that 2 hours away or 3 hours away for that game means when you go back to normal life, it's actually easier to deal with that thing that you're facing, because you've cleared your mind, you've cleared your thoughts, you've refocused yourself and kind of recentered yourself. And it's now easier to go back and tackle that, whatever that issue was, whether it was work, home, whatever it might be.
Yeah, because I think when you're stuck in that situation, it feels like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no way out. So having a time that you can literally just separate yourself from it minimizes it, even if just a fraction, just for you to be like, I'm somewhere else. I'm not stuck in that situation. You might physically still be there, but it's just that almost mental disconnect that gives a bit of relief, which I think is something that is quite unique to Dungeons and Dragons, because I know there's a lot of different ways to do it through gaming, board games and stuff, but I think with the difference with Dungeons and Dragons is maybe the creative side of it. It's not just switching off your brain, having a controller in your hands and playing Baldur's Gate, for example, which again is D&D related, but it's not quite the same as actually sitting there talking to people, working out problems, creating things with your mind. That's a much higher level of escapism, I think, than just rolling some.
I'd agree with that. I think there are lots of other tools available to us to exercise this escapism, and you've kind of touched on computer stories, but they are scripted.
Yeah.
So you are following a story that has been created by someone else. And it doesn't mean to say it's not enjoyable. I mean, I get a huge amount of enjoyment in playing games, and the satisfaction of actually beating a level 1 boss is amazing. But you're right, D&D gives you that, it's another level, because the story is driven by you. It doesn't matter what the DM's written, you as a player can completely change that.
Yeah.
And using that creativity and being something that you're not can bring a huge amount of sort of self-satisfaction and fulfillment.
I think I would say that as well. It's doing it as part of a team.
Yeah.
You know, computer games and stuff like that. Yeah, it's escapism, but it's just you still. You know, the satisfaction I get actually when somebody else at our table succeeds actually far outweighs. You know, when my own plan pays off, it's like, cool, that worked. But actually seeing somebody else succeed at something gives me a lot more joy, and I think that comes from D&D.
That sense of community, which we are kind of community creatures as human beings. We work better in packs. So having your little packs together is a definite natural benefit, I think, when it comes to situations like that of everyone winning together or everyone losing together. Even that is when you can share that emotion with each other and go, it didn't work out, but we can get through it together. And sometimes it's another part of it, it's that cathartic kind of a safe space to express emotions that you might be dealing with, and like you said, there's no repercussions to it, and it's a chance to work through different scenarios and have the freedom to go, I don't want to be nice to this NPC. I'm going to be mean to this NPC. My boss was mean to me today at work, and I want to take the control back and be mean to someone else and know that there is no repercussions for it. Potentially they could be the BBEG and there could be repercussions, but not real world ones.
I think you're right, and that's a sense of community that we have, isn't it? What you're saying there. And if you look at D&D in isolation, away from the charity, you would only get that same sense of community for a long-running campaign where you spend a lot of time with these other people and you have that safe space and you're able to have those conversations. Because of the nature of what we do, how we have a massive community, you might not be in the same campaign as somebody, but you might have been on an adventure day, a 12-hour game with them, and 3 or 4 one-shots with them, and got a really good rapport and friendship with them, and that enables you to support each other more closely. And we've seen that with three people within the charity supporting each other through some quite heavy losses in their personal life. Those three people lent on each other, and they did not know themselves before the charity existed.
Yeah.
Not know themselves. They didn't know each other. They didn't know each other before
Who
the
am
charity
I?
before the charity existed. Yeah, just that community sense of relief.
Yeah.
I think one of the other unusual things about D&D or role-playing games as a whole is it puts us all on a level playing field. I mean, if we look at ourselves as individuals, as people, I think it's probably fair to say that the four of us would probably not have been friends if it wasn't for D&D, because, I mean, let's face it, I'm old enough to be everyone here's father. I mean, that's just a fact. So we wouldn't have gone into a pub and had a few drinks together, and we wouldn't have done other things together because, you know, our likes and and dislikes may differ. But this brings us together, and we still have a good relationship as friends despite the age gap.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I'm confident that when I'm in a bath chair, I've got abundance of people who can push me around and look after me.
I think D&D does that like no other game though, you know, so I do wargaming and stuff as well, but that's yes, you play with your friends, but that is a conflict. Whereas I think D&D, because the way people build and play their characters, you actually see a bit of who they are as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've not seen Andy ever play a character at a table without that character making jokes, and that's not the character, that's just Andy coming through in his characters kind of thing. And so I think you get to know people better with role-playing games.
Yeah.
I think that when you mention that tabletop games are more about conflict, that's only if you're any good.
But just expanding on that as well, I'm not a very social person. So unless I'm literally put in the situation of there being new people, I don't actively put myself out there. I don't engage. My friends that I have, I've met through work, and they would be the first people to tell you that if they don't reach out and contact me, you could not hear from me for 6 months. I'm not that kind of person who keeps engaged with people, who keeps talking to people just because it's the way I am. But what's really nice is that with this kind of community and the way that it works, you turn up and it's like, oh, hello. It's like nothing's changed. It's like that old friend, you meet up with them and you can just pick up straight back from where you were, which is a really nice element to it. But there also isn't the pressure for the other side, which is the bit I'm uncomfortable with, which is the keeping in contact and reaching out. It's that very relaxed, laid back. You turn up, you play a game with each other, you maybe see each other 3 or 4 times, so you get comfortable with hugging. so there's that element of it, but there's no pressure to be like, come to my wedding. There's not that kind of forceful side, so it feels much more natural and a little bit less heavy as a way of dealing with people socially, if that's not something you're necessarily great at. So some other elements to it are also using it as a creative outlet, because I know that there are a lot of people who have maybe a lifestyle or a job that doesn't give many options for being creative, whether that's the role that you play in your working life or the responsibilities that you have at home. So for me personally, I am a TH thespian, and I used to do a lot of performance. I used to do a lot of performing arts. I've done pantomimes, I've done theatre plays, I've done some kind of small movies and stuff, and I have a degree in performing arts related topics. And then because of certain things that happened in my life, I wasn't able to do that anymore. So for me, this is awesome as an avenue for where I have my work life that I have to survive, but doesn't necessarily fulfill that creative element. It's another way to get that buzz of doing something creative when I probably wouldn't be able to otherwise. And I think there's a few people who have that as well. I want to be a superhero today. And you get to play that part and explore that, which is good.
It's always disappointing though when you want to be that superhero, you roll the dice and you then say bugger.
The dice gods do not favour you.
Oh, I have offended the dice gods. I have absolutely offended them.
So I think going off from what you said, Bertie, really, in terms of like real life, I'm like the polar opposite So, I work in IT, I program all day. In theory, there is no need for me to speak to anybody. I can do it all via email. We do, but in theory, there's not. And I'm not particularly kind of outgoing. So the creative side for me is more around painting the minis. The Discord community I find really useful, where people are sharing what they're doing, and I love seeing that side of things. In terms of like playing the game, I love the creativity of a problem, like solving that problem in the moment. I don't sit there for hours and hours before trying to come up with the most flamboyant creative character description. I'm happy to start session one with, Bob the builder who wields a big hammer. That's perfectly fine starting point as far as I'm concerned. He likes hitting things, and then we'll, as the most moments come up, develop that way, and develop in the moment.
Mm. Creativity is something that ebbs and flows as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you don't always feel massively creative. Like miniature painting, sometimes, I paint loads of models, sometimes I can't bother to paint any at all. And it's the same when it comes to D&D, writing adventures or creating characters. If you're not in the mood for it, it becomes unenjoyable. But the nice thing with D&D is that when you need to scratch that creative itch, all you need is a piece of paper and a pen. You don't need anything else, and you can just sit down and just go to town, and it can really help. It's back to that kind of distraction and escapism within that creativity, isn't it? You use that creativity as an escape to get away from things that are going on and to focus your mind on something different. I think the creativity part of it is hugely important.
And you're always sure that itch is creative and not sort of, some other sort of itch
Medical.
that requires cream.
Usually.
50-50.
Well, maybe 60-40.
Okay. In favour, or?
I'm not saying.
I think that's interesting you bring that up as well. I mean, that kind of creative block, I think a lot of people kind of worry about it. I know with the War Council and stuff, taking over the Celestial Realms, I've got ideas, but the last few months, my brain capacity has not been there to write an adventure or a short campaign or anything. It's just not there. I've got got ideas, got the bullet points. Actually fleshing stuff out is not happening, and that's okay in this environment, isn't it? Everybody knows you get blocks. There's lots of people who experience the same thing. So I think for me, there's no pressure when that happens.
That brings me to something I'm interested to know. With you all being people who run games, where does it sit for you when you are maybe having a bit of a tough time, or one of your players might be having a bit of a tough time? How do you kind of overcome that? How does that work for you, maybe if you're trying to run a game or and you have a prep for a game?
So because of how my brain is wired and the challenges that I deal with that, I get a lot of kind of anxiety about doing things, like physically doing things, to the point where I can just sit there and do nothing, or not want to do something, or have agreed to do something and then go, I don't want to do it anymore. So the way I deal with it is just by taking a deep breath and just jumping in and just doing it. And it goes back to what you said earlier when you were talking about not sure if you've got the energy to play in that game, but actually when you start playing the game, you love it. It's the same kind of thing as overcoming that initial kind of block, if you like, to chuck yourself in, to then reset your brain to think, actually, no, this is what I want to do and this is what I enjoy. And because of how that works, sometimes you just need to have that push, but that can't always come from you. So it means other people who support you outside of the charity or outside of Dungeons & Dragons, if they understand the way that you're thinking and need to give you that push to do it, and that can be really helpful as well. And that generally means playing D&D sits probably higher up on my priority list than perhaps it even should in what's normally socially acceptable. Obviously, families always come first, and then you've got to deal with work as well. But D&D's up there for me because I know if I can just get over that block and just deal with it, it will help to reset the way I'm thinking or how I'm feeling.
It could be a distraction as well.
Yeah.
I know from my own experience, I was due to run a game on a certain date, and 3 or 4 days before that date, my father passed away. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to do it. But I thought, these players, it's been booked in their diaries, they're looking forward to it. So I did it. And it was great. It was great because I was able to sort of just, for those few hours, forget about the trauma of losing my father and do something that actually made me feel good.
Yeah.
So I think, it can be a tool, and it's not for everyone. Some people might not be able to, view it in that way. But for me personally, it was a great way. It was a great distraction that just made that few moments a little easier. And going back to an earlier point that you raised about if you've got a player in your group that is going through something, I would be humbled by that. If they are trusting me, despite what they're going through, if they're trusting me to sort of take them through this fantasy, this story, and make them feel good about themselves, even if it's only for a few hours, that's an amazing responsibility, and it's something I would embrace. I feel that's me being serious again. I'm not used to being serious.
You okay?
Maybe not. I'm going to lay down.
Okay. Yeah, have a lay down. Don't fall asleep though.
How about you, John? Any thoughts on that?
So for me, it's guilt is the honest answer. So when I'm DMing, when I have those slumps, I know that the players have got a game booked, and I won't let them down. So that's what always gets me through the hump. But I'm the same with everything. So like with the wargaming, I've got army that's unpainted, and my wife will say to me, "You got to paint those, or you might as well get rid of them." It's like, okay, yeah, I can't like, I feel guilty about buying anything else until they're finished, and that's what gets me there. But it's for the same reasons that that you guys said. I know that once I do it, the enjoyment I get out of actually running it. If I want that enjoyment, that result, I need to kind of get into the creative process and get going with it.
If you had an instance where you were approached by a player and they had a specific topic that they either wanted to avoid or wanted to specifically try and tackle in a session or in a game, is that something that one would be comfortable with? And two, if so, how do you think you would go about that? What do you think is important in the process of that?
I think avoiding things is easier. And as a DM, when you're putting an adventure together, you should always be thinking about those kind of hard and soft limits for your players. Like, what do you want me to avoid? What is like a complete no-go for you? And for most people, the limits are pretty similar. But you might have the odd person who does have a trigger for whatever reason that needs to be avoided. And as a DM, you've got to be respectful of that, particularly in the charity. Because as a DM for the charity, you don't just represent yourself in that game, you're flying the flag for the charity as well. For the Charity Gaming Guild, you need to knock the microphone over. You need to make sure that you uphold the reputation of the charity, and that's something we're really clear about when people are running events and games for us. Tackling something in a game, though, that's never something I've been asked to do. But I think it's something that you would almost need to do alongside the player and involve them a little bit in the planning process of that, rather than just doing what you think is best. Or even, again, drawing on the fact that our charity is a massive community, taking that issue to other DMs or other trusted people within the charity to talk about how best you can deal with it, and relying on the support from others is really important, without saying this person has this problem and kind of pointing the finger and highlighting it. It can then become more of a kind of joint approach with other DMs who may have experienced the same thing or may have some guidance for it, just making sure that you don't accidentally make it worse involving that player.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm running a game, the end objective is people want to have fun. Mm-hmm. It's a game at the end of the day. And I will adjust my approach based on my audience. So if I have new players, people I've never met before, I will make a point of asking them about their limits. So, we all know that I can drop the odd swear word. We all know that some of my humour is beyond blue. But if it's someone who is new, I don't want to offend them. I don't want them to not enjoy the experience. So I'll ask and be very open and sort of say, okay, so how are you if I swear? What about humour? Do you mind coarse humour? And if they do object, I will adjust. It's not a big thing. It's about making sure that people who are playing the game have fun, because that's what it's all about.
I think asking those questions up front is really important, especially for the avoid stuff, because it makes it, avoiding, like you say, is easier, isn't it? If somebody says this is a hard limit, You just need to let your table know at this table that's a hard limit, and that's the end of it. Like, there is no discussion. The helping people work through stuff, I think, is a trickier issue. My concern would always be that I don't know what I'm doing and won't help them through it. I'd actually make the problem worse. So I personally would want to have a long chat with them first to make sure I understood what they're actually trying to do, and almost let them say, look, I kind of need to go through steps A, B and C to get to where I need to be, and then kind of review that with them. I wouldn't want to set that for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. Everything that you're saying makes sense.
Wibble.
Well, apart from that. No. I appreciate that it is a heavy topic for our first episode, but it is something that I think is very important to discuss, both as people who have to overcome it personally or have to support others who maybe are going through certain things. And one of the most interesting things for me is that Dungeons and Dragons a few years ago was, for a lot of people, unknown. It was very much considered, nerds do that. The creepy people in their parents' basements play that game. Ooh, the ones who don't wash. I'm obviously not being serious. But now, with how much it's grown and how many more people it's reaching, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's grown as much as it has?
I think the appeal is very different for everyone. We all come into this for our own reasons, and what attracted me to it is probably not the same as what attracted you to it. But I think if you like stories, whether that's something that you read or something you watch through a TV series or a movie, if you like that, this kind of takes that to another level because you're in the story. You are a character, you can develop that character, you can actually sort of develop the story itself and guide where it goes. And I think that's a huge appeal to many people. And you've just got to look, I mean, I know what you said about how there was perhaps a stereotype of a typical D&D player many years ago, but actually you look at the number of celebrities that play this game and enjoy it and publicly tell the world how they play and enjoy it. I think it's testament to how this game is evolving and the benefits it's going to bring to people.
Yeah, kind of echo that. And I also think things like the online streaming games, things like Critical Role, Amazon show, Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of that stuff has made it more mainstream. So I don't think there's the stigma attached to it anymore. There still is. You talk to people about playing D&D and they go, what? But they don't really understand it. And if you actually spend 15 minutes, like, you can play D&D with someone just by talking to them without any dice rolls to give them a flavour of what it is. And you find that actually, you start doing it, they suddenly get into it and they're completely hooked on it. I think it's just about encouraging people to approach it with an open mind for those who still have a stigma.
It's got fecking dragons in it. What more do you want?
I think I agree with everything Andy and John have said there, but also it is such an accepting community. Everyone who plays D&D is very accepting of other people's kind of positions, or irrespective of gender or sexuality or religion or belief, anything like that. You can leave all that stuff at the door. Because when you turn up to play D&D is your common interest, that's what you're there for, and all of that stuff, it doesn't have any bearing on that. As long as you're respectful to each other and just a decent human being, you're going to have a good time. And I think that's another thing that appeals to it, is the openness of the community for D&D. And you see that not just within the Charity Gaming Guild, but if you look at pretty much any D&D community, it is the same. It does attract those kind of... It's a niche hobby, isn't it? It's not for everybody, but the fact that we can be respectful to all of those communities and all of those groups all of the time, I mean, it appeals to everybody.
I think it's one of those hobbies, though. I know what you say about it. It's niche and it won't appeal to everyone, but I think there are a lot of people miss out because they don't try it. I mean, I was always against role-play games. I used to play board games and tabletop games, but the idea of sitting around a table and putting on a funny voice for my character, that was a step too far for me. And then you sort of convinced me to play out one game to raise money. So I did it for the cause rather than for the experience. And what was it? After one game, I was moaning at you about why it took you so long to get me into the hobby. and I've been hooked ever since. And I think sadly, there are a lot of people who are going to be out there that are going to miss out on this experience and the joy and the benefit that this hobby can bring, because there's a stigma perhaps attached to it, wrongly so. And we just need more people that can say, give it a go.
Yeah. And I think that's where what you were saying, John, comes into it, doesn't it? Like Critical Role, it brings D&D to the fore and shows people actually what it is. Like, this is D&D, and actually it's accessible and it's easy to play and anyone can enjoy it.
Just as an example, one of my colleagues at work was taking the mick because I said, we've got D&D on Tuesday night, like, I'm not staying late tonight for work, I'm off, I'm going to play D&D. So she was taking the mick, and I said to her, well, look, let's play. I said, right, you're an elf, you're in the woods, there's a rustle in the bushes, what do you do? She's like, what are you talking about? There's a rustle in the bushes, what do you do? She got into it, we played for 35 minutes.
And you relate to D&D?
And you were paid for that?
Yeah.
The one video, so whenever because I get that quite a lot, obviously, because I talk about a charity to pretty much anyone that will listen to me. I always direct people to an episode of what they called Celebrity D&D. And it's the episode where Matt Mercer runs a game for Vin Diesel.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he is probably, Vin Diesel, not Matt Mercer, Vin Diesel is probably the last person you would expect to play D&D, but actually he's fanatical about it and absolutely loves it. And you get the similar kind of thing with the likes of Joe Manganiello as well, another massive celebrity that people just wouldn't expect to play D&D. People don't understand it, and until you direct them to them, they go, oh, actually, yeah, it looks pretty fun. If you can get over that initial, what you said, Andy, that doing a voice, although you haven't got to do a voice, and you can get over that kind of role play side of it and engage with the game, I think most people would enjoy it if they just tried it.
I was going to say, within our own community, we've seen this quite a lot, haven't we? People coming to us just going, I'm just interested, I want to try it, and then they come along the next November game or whatever, they've got a friend with them or two friends with them, or they've played once before, had a bad experience and gone, it must be better than this, and come to us, and then they're members the next thing we know, kind of thing. So I think also it's important that, for us as a charity and for anyone really running games, that you try and do it in the right way. Yeah. As a DM, I think you do have a bit of responsibility and duty of care to the people you're running games for, because potentially you could put them off for life. Like, if you do it really badly, and don't, it's not complicated, it's not difficult, you don't have to do anything spectacular, do you? Just to have people have a good time. But if people, like you say, if people don't have fun for that session, they're not going to come back.
No. And that's exactly why in November we're so careful about who we choose to run those games, because those big events attract so many people who don't come to any other event. And from a charity's perspective, we're trying to raise money for whichever cause it is for that year. It's the James Anthony Foundation this year. It was ADAPT last year. Those people bring money in to support that charity by having a good time. So if they don't have a good time, they're not going to come back. We're not going to be able to have as big an impact on that charity as we perhaps could have done.
I like the fact that you brought up the Celebrity D&D episode, because that, for me, when it comes to the growth of Dungeons and Dragons, I do think it is very much the visibility of it in the media. So it's the celebrities that are getting involved, and there is a brilliant, it's a very short clip, so the Celebrity D&D one, you'd have to watch quite a long episode to get the full enjoyment out of it, but there's a really good example of a very, very short excerpt from an interview, and it is Deborah Ann Wall with interviewing John Berthel, they're both actors in Daredevil, and he asks her exactly the same thing, like, what is D&D? And she uses the same thing. She's like, okay, you're in a forest, there's a rustle in the bushes. Like, what do you want to do? He's like, well, okay, I'll go check it out. And she talks him through, and it's only maybe 2-3 minutes, and looking at the change in his face from the point where he's like the confusion of what is it that we're doing, to you can literally see the moment that he gets hooked. And that is incredible. The fact that it's 2 to 3 minutes of her just, you're walking through it, you found an owlbear cub. And he's like, oh, what's that? And she describes it, and he's like, he almost jumps out of his chair when he's learning about this. And I think that's the thing. It's, you can physically see in people the impact that the game has on them. And that's a very, very big deal. That it can affect someone in a manner so much that they can have a physical, visceral reaction to a game. And sometimes it isn't always a happy one. Sometimes it is a teary one. But that's just because of that emotional investment, and that you're having that connection with your character or with your colleagues, your friends' characters, and that sense of community again. So it's a really beautiful thing to see, the development of it, and in our community as well, how much bigger the events are now compared to how they were at the beginning, and the engagement that we're getting, the people that are getting involved. I guess a question that I would have is, if you had like one sentence to use to try and explain to someone why you think they should get involved, the benefit to them for D&D, what do you think you would say is your hook to reel them in?
I think before I answer that question, I think it's something I just wanted to really sort of highlight, and that's we focus on D&D, but what we're talking about are RPGs, role-play games in general, because D&D, whilst it's the biggest, the principles are the same. You know, someone who might not really appreciate fantasy-related stories, there are plenty of sci-fi related. So you could do things like Fallout games, you can do Star Trek, you can do Star Wars, you can do Aliens. So there's a lot of other games that follow a similar principle and would have the same benefits, but they're not fantasy or D&D related. But in answer to your question about one sentence, who wouldn't want to spend 3 hours with all of this?
And he gestures to himself.
Yes, beautiful, thank you.
I think for me to answer your question, it would be, if you haven't tried it, you don't know what you're missing. Come and try it.
Nice.
It's a really hard question.
It is.
Very hard. I think I would just say, everything's up to you. Like within a game of D&D, you have complete control over your character. To liken it to a computer game, in a computer game you can't go wherever you want. You can't do whatever you want. There are limits. Even in open world games, there are literal limits. In a game of D&D, you want to go and punch that shopkeeper in the face, you can. You want to go and stick an arrow up his nostril, you can do that too. You know, there's no kind of limit as such. It is complete open world, and you can be who you want to be and do what you want to do with no judgment. Well, mostly no judgment.
Come and be the villain or the hero that you want to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think for me it would be, what have you got to lose? Because we've been saying there's no judgment with it, there isn't any expectation, there is no strict narrative that you have to adhere to and you cannot deviate from. You're going to make friends from it, and if you don't make friends, you'll make friendly acquaintances. I have yet to experience a single negative about tabletop RPGs.
Well, I would say the one thing you've got to lose is all your gold when I use Mage Hand to pick your pocket.
Yes, thievery.
Hours and hours of time creating characters. That's something else you lose. Get on D&D Beyond and spend there creating hundreds and hundreds of characters that you're never going to get to use.
Just go back to what you said there, Bertie, about the type of people that play and having never had a negative experience with people as well. I think within the charity even more so, you eliminate, no, you don't eliminate the bad people, that's not what I mean. You don't get those kinds of people who come and join in because of the nature of what we're doing. Everybody understands what you're there to do. You're there to support the charity. And all the people we have come to our events are all great. We've never had a problem at any event with anybody. We've never had to pull anyone away from a table and have a quiet word with them and say, calm yourself down, behave yourself, don't do this, don't do that. And touch wood, we've never had to kick anybody out of an event either. We still make allowances for that when we play on the events. We talk about player conduct and DM conduct in our event packs just to make expectation really, really clear. We've never had to use any of it though. It's the community we have is is fantastic, and the people that join in with our games and our events are just amazing. Everyone's so supportive and very, very welcoming. Andy had a new player, I think it was Heart of Glass. He had a new player who'd never been with us before. Yeah.
Yep.
And they came back in November as well.
Yep.
They're coming to Nottingham in March. They've signed up to Patreon. They're a Patreon member now. So just that one game with Andy, that one interaction with Andy and the people who are playing that game has led to this person becoming invested in the charity. And that doesn't happen if it's not a good group of people with a nice atmosphere who aren't welcoming. You don't get that. And just that's one person. That's one example. I could sit here and probably give you 40 examples of people that's happened with. But it just demonstrates what the charity's like. But the charity is hung around D&D. That's what we've built the charity around. So I think it's a reflection of the community that play Dungeons & Dragons.
What we would really like from our listeners is for you guys to get involved in these topics. Get in the Discord, put some comments in, your thoughts, your feelings, what Dungeons & Dragons or other TTRPGs have done for you with regards to your mental health, your experiences, how it helps you, what tools you feel it gives you to not only engage in these circumstances, but maybe even outside of Dungeons & Dragons. Are there things that you've found, that you've learned or you've experienced that actually help you in your normal everyday today life? We'd also appreciate some topics from you moving forward, different things that you would like us to talk about, discuss in the community episode, so that we can explore things for you. You can get our takes, our ideas. And I just want to do a little disclaimer. None of us here are mental health professionals. None of us here have any kind of medical... none of us have a medical degree, right? I'm just checking. No. Whoa.
No.
Wiggly eyes. No. So
Slow wink.
please don't consider any of this to be medical advice. It's just helpful chat to maybe give you something to think about, maybe give you a little push to get involved in the games if you haven't considered doing it already.
I have 37 degrees, all in Celsius.
Andy's killed everyone. It's great. It's fine.
It was degrees in Celsius that got me.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening. We're super excited to hear your thoughts, your feelings, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.
With our episode concluded, it is time to thank our incredible Patreon members. So here we go. Ruby members first. Paul C, Lil May, Joshua, Jason, Dave, Claire and Alberta. Thank you so much. We only have one Sapphire member. That's Gary. Thank you for your support, Gary, and for being a Sapphire member and flying the Sapphire flag. Into our Emerald memberships, we have Stuart and Rebecca. Thank you for your support there. Our Diamond memberships now with Zeke, Martin, John, Lizzie, Chris, Bertie and Ash, all Diamond members. We then have our Obsidian members. We have Becca, Niall, JP, Dave, Ethan and Ant. And finally we have our Ruling Council members. We have Chris and Sophia. Thank you so much to all of our Patreon members. You make what we do here at the Charity Gaming Guild possible and are a huge part of supporting these incredible organisations. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. If you want to shout out, you want to hear your name on the Nat Pun podcast, head over to patreon.com/CharityDND. Sign up for any Patreon tier and you'll get a shout out on the podcast too. And as part of the higher tiers, you will be hearing from some of our members on the podcast in the future. We'll let you know when that's going to be. But that's it from us. Thank you for listening and we'll see you in the next one.